Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Big Deck Energy. I am Allie.
And I am Scala.
And on tonight's episode, we are going to be talking about horror.
Ooh, spooky.
It's not as spooky as it sounds. Before we get into that, though, Scala, we're going to turn you over to our social media and a few announcements.
Yes. So, YouTube, you could follow us at Big Deck Energy. Link to our Discord is on there as well. Instagram, Big Deck Energy Podcast, and Twitter, Big Deck Energy _. In addition to that, just do a correction to our last podcast when we were talking about a combat wheelchair. We actually got tweeted by Sarah Thompson, the creator of Combat Wheelchair, just to inform us that she actually is disabled. She's just not wheelchair bound anymore. So a lot of her inspiration came from her experiences while she was wheelchair bound, and obviously talking to other people in the community. She was really nice about it, so thank you for that. Thanks for not canceling us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and we're still huge supporters, so please
Absolutely.
Make sure you go check that out. Donate to the Patreon.
Yes.
All those good things, right?
Yeah.
And we also have...
My dice bag came in.
The dice bag came in. So we just wanted to show it off, considering we ordered it. We talked about it last week. So Kim Designs?
Yes, that's So Kim Designs.
And it came with a little note.
Handwritten note. And this comes personally written notes with every dice bag. I saw in the one of the other reviews that they left there. They got one as well. Very nice fabric, very well done. I used to work for like a screen printing and embroidery company, so I know how difficult some of that stuff is, and sewing is so much harder. But it's really well done. 8 very spacious pockets inside of it.
And it's so pretty.
Yeah, it's really nice. And it's shipped like literally the next day after I purchased it, it was already shipped. So that's how we were able to have it on this podcast.
Yeah.
So definitely go check them out on Etsy. That's So Kim Designs.
Good job. Thank you so much. I'm sure Scala will use it to kill our characters soon enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so jumping into today's episode, we're talking about horror, and we're not talking about horror in the sense of Friday the 13th, Freddy versus Jason, Halloween type horror, but we're talking about horror at the table.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're going to go over some of that stuff today. So we figured, since our podcast is sort of in its infancy, some really basic stuff that we haven't talked about is table etiquette.
Yeah, it's something that it's very easy to get overlooked. And it's not like a conversation that most people have. Like if you're a new player to D&D, I guess it's kind of awkward for like the veterans to go up to you and be like, this is what you should and shouldn't do. But it is definitely something that should happen. So we're going to kind of just go over some of our experiences and things that you should know before getting into a game or a server, whatever it might be.
Yeah, know before you go. And we'll split it up like that a little bit. Mm-hmm. There's some just generic rules that without being told, but we'll talk about it in a person-to-person game. And with the panderoni situation, is that most of your games will probably be conducted online, and there's still etiquette there as well. So we'll just jump right into it. Let's see, you now have experience as a DM, which is very exciting.
Yes, I love it.
You're very good at it. So what I would like to think that we're good players, and that we behave properly, but let's kind of start with if we've done anything that you don't like, or just being now that you are behind the screen, what are some things that you think are super important to you as far as table etiquette go? Because I do think it kind of varies from DM to DM. But what do you think are just like your basic, like, if you were to run a game tomorrow for a bunch of people, these are like the ground rules you would set for etiquette?
Well, luckily, my first time DMing is in a group with all my friends, so I think we all kind of had an understanding of what to do and what not to do. It was kind of easier for us, but I would say one of the most important things would be an understanding of what's expected from the players, as far as how much research they have to do for the topic, stuff like that. Burning Wheel is a little different than D&D.
True.
Just because with Burning Wheel, right? Like I expect you guys to kind of ask for tests and stuff like that. It's just kind of part of the system. It's a little different with something like D&D, where it's kind of insulting to ask your DM like, hey, can I get a dexterity check or something like it. It's just a little, you leave that kind of up to the DM because they're driving the story forward. And vice versa. I think another big part is just making sure, as the DM, you should kind of make sure that one player isn't steamrolling the game and kind of just not leaving a lot of area for the other characters and players to get involved. That doesn't happen in our game, luckily, but I could see that being a problem.
I've been in games where that's been a problem. I think that's a great point. I think that is a twofold DM and player thing. I think as a player, you should recognize. I think we should kind of focus on D&D since it's the broadest one.
Absolutely, yeah.
As far as like most of these things you'll just take to any table, like you said, with the exception of Burning Wheel, where like the players drive the story more. In D&D and most tabletop games, I think your character has a set of skills and you should know that those are the skills that you're good at. It doesn't mean that you can't do other things.
Yeah.
It's just that, like, if you're the bard, you're the charismatic one. If you're the fighter, you're the brawn. If you're the wizard, you're the spellcaster. And I think that some people get so caught up in wanting to be good at everything that they forget that there's people who specialize in things. And that's kind of like the point of having a party.
Exactly. That's like key point. The party, like you're working together. Yeah.
You're not the main character. And like this is one of my favorite we joke about this a lot. It's like people who have like main character syndrome.
Yes.
In D&D, you are the main character theoretically, but like you're the main character amongst the other main characters, right? Like you as a player, you're the main character to you, but your player next to you is their main character. So it's like watching Harry Potter and saying that like Ron and Hermione aren't main characters, because they are, and they are in different parts of the books the main character, even though it's about Harry Potter, So I think that that's a good way to think about it, is remember that like you are important, but you're not the only person.
Yeah, and the moment you start doing that, and if you do start steamrolling in the, you're not cognizant of it, or the DM doesn't stop it, you might have players falling out, right? Because if I'm not getting enough playtime, I might not be interested. I put all this work into this character, and I don't get to do anything with it.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a hard balance, because sometimes you do get put in parties where like you are the only person doing anything. Like I was in a party not too long ago where they were all new players, so everyone was super uncomfortable talking and like doing anything. So every time there was a decision, they'd be like, okay, Allie, well, like, what are we doing? I'm like, so like the DM and I came to an agreement that like I would stop answering questions. Even if I had an answer, I would just like in character not know. So like they had to make choices. So I think that that's a good solution, is if you feel like you're the player who is doing a lot of the work, like you're the workhorse, maybe talking to your DM about like, hey, listen, like I know it's like pulling teeth, but if I don't have the answer and you tell me I don't have the answer, then like they have to have it. They have to be able to figure it out.
Forces them to bring it to the table. That's a good point, though. So how do you feel about as far as role play? Like I know some players are comfortable with speaking in character and doing accents and stuff like that, but as a new player, I definitely wasn't as comfortable with it. So do you think it is important for other players to kind of encourage that from them, or do you think that ends up making the player uncomfortable?
I think it's a bit of both. I think that a lot of people want to role play. In my experience, most people want to get to the point of role play, and they're more comfortable when other people are doing it with them. It's intimidating when someone is really good at role play and you're just starting and like you are still like nervous about it. And I still get that way too. Like even when I DM, sometimes I get a little like, I don't even want to say shy. And I went to school for theater and like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, there is this weird like, oh man, like, is this voice going to come across the way I want it to? Or like, is someone going to get offended that I am using this like Southern draw and I don't really know how to speak? So, like,
yeah.
I think it's good to be encouraging and it's bad to be forceful.
Yeah, that's kind of my standpoint on it.
Like,
and I think, sometimes it might be better outside of session to kind of talk to them and be like, hey, like, give them words of encouragement. Like, hey, like, you did really good with your role playing when you were doing it. Just do it a little more. Like feel comfortable.
Yeah, like,
and
don't
like
be
you said, the more
scared.
people are doing it, I think you kind of fall into it a little more.
When other people do it, I just feel like you don't care. Like you are now the person who is weird for not doing it when the rest of your party's doing it.
Yeah.
Where when you're the one person that role plays, you're the weird one amongst the people that aren't doing it. So like the game that I've talked about a few times that I play, that I've been playing for 3 years, my character doesn't have an accent because when I started, no one had an accent. And I was like, well, I don't want to be the only one like doing it and whatever. And I'm friends with them all now. Like now I literally don't care. But at the time I was still timid. But it got to the point where I was tired of just being like me. So I messaged my DM and I was like, hey, listen, like, can I have an accent that she's been hiding because she's from like a small town, whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, totally. So like, if you don't have it now, there's no reason you can't like work it in.
I never thought about that. Like maybe developing like it was like a hidden thing that you could bring into it.
Yeah, or if you just get comfortable at one point, you're just like, hey, listen, my character has always talked with this accent. I'm just finally doing it. Most people are.
Did you do that in that game? And did you find that like other players kind of?
I'm not there yet because
okay.
In the next, it should be, spoiler alert if they end up listening to this, in the next session, they're contacting her family, and that's when she's going to do it for the first time because she doesn't want her family to hear her speak differently. So I hope it'll be like super eye-opening or like super surprising to everybody. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, because as somebody relatively new to the community, that would definitely make me feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Like we were playing this game and it's also easier to get in character when you have an accent. You know, you're not playing as yourself as much. But if somebody else at the table did it, I'd definitely feel more comfortable and kind of like, oh, I want an accent too now.
Right? Yeah, and it's funny because we've added people through as the year and a half has gone on, and all of the new players have accents and all of us original ones don't because that's not what we had. So it's really funny that like now we're the ones that are just kind of like us. So that's what I'm working in. So all that to say is that I think that you should encourage people to role play, but it's certainly not a necessary part of the game. But to kind of like wrap that up in table etiquette, I think that as a DM, you should set the expectation of what you want. I think if you're a DM who wants people to roleplay, I think you should put that out there and tell people like, hey, listen, this is a roleplay heavy game. I'm expecting you guys, you don't need to do accents, but I'm expecting you to talk in character. I'm expecting you to do X, Y, and Z. Because it's really awkward if you get into a game and you're like, okay, guys, this is super roleplay heavy. And someone's like, ooh, I was signed up for a dungeon crawl. And like, that's not my thing.
And especially from a like DM standpoint, if you're the NPCs are the only people role playing, it's like.
It's super weird. You talk to yourself.
And then it's hard to tell if they're even interested because it can be misconstrued as the players just not really being into the campaign because they're not role playing.
100%. I think open communication in anything in life, not just gaming, obviously, is like the key to success with all of this. Do's and don'ts. It's funny that you say that about the burning wheel thing that we talked about before, because one of my biggest pet peeves as a DM is when people ask me for things that are like, if you in character cannot convey that you're trying to be intimidating, I'm not going to have you roll an intimidation check.
Yeah, that's a very good
like
point.
that. Like that's one of those things that personally for me is a pet peeve. I've had DMs who've been like, "Oh, are you trying to roll for intimidation?" And I like that. Like I like the idea of like, "Hey, are you trying to be intimidating?" I'm like, "Oh yeah," and he's like, "Okay, well, you can roll, but like." That's not like super coming across. Like, I think it's good to have open communication. But me personally, as a DM, it almost is offensive when people start asking for roles because it's like you're doing one of two things. You're either telling me that I'm not doing my job well enough, that you don't think that I can read what you're doing, which sometimes it's just that you might not need to roll. Like, a lot of times people don't understand that, like, if you're a 7-foot human who's threatening a 5-year-old child, you probably don't need to roll intimidation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and like
definitely.
that happens a lot where people are like, I'm trying to be intimidated. Are you trying to kill the child? Or like,
yeah, exactly. What are you trying to do at that point?
Right.
Yeah, and it also, I think when you do that and you kind of ask that you're coming out of character to do that, and it kind of it just throws the game off.
It does.
It breaks the flow of the game, and I could definitely see that kind of being insulting, and especially if it's something that doesn't necessarily affect the story.
Right.
You know, maybe that's just me because I started with Burning Wheel, but like if it doesn't affect the story, I'm not going to probably make you roll for it because
exactly.
I'm just going to let it happen.
And there's two play styles. Some people like to be super dice heavy, you know, because some people, a lot of the fun is rolling the dice. And I get that. I really do. I get that. You know, for some people, again, I think we lean towards role play heavy games. So it's a little bit of a skewed opinion because for some people, they're not comfortable role playing. So it's hard for them to convey what they want to do and they'd rather just roll for it, which I get. But you don't have to be screaming at somebody for them to understand that you're trying to be intimidating. Even if you're not role playing, like there's been plenty of times where like just to get through a scene because I didn't want to make my DM role play for another 20 minutes, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to go say something like super mean to that person and try to make them cry. Okay, you clearly know what I'm trying to do. So at that point, you know I'm asking for a check without asking for a check. So there's ways to do it that aren't like intrusive and like offensive.
Yeah, use your adjectives. That's like another one. You know, if you're trying to use stealth, you know, you say sneakily or I'm carefully trying to quietly. Exactly. I agree with you though that from like the standpoint of like don't ask me for checks. Like it's your job to convey that message, and if you're not, then that's something you have to work on. You have to explain it a little better, or you know.
And I think from a player's side, to be my own devil's advocate, I do think that it's frustrating if you don't have a DM that's actively picking up on that, because I have also been on the other side where I've been really trying to do things and be like, well, you're just never going to convince someone. It's like, okay, but I'm a bard with plus 11 persuasion and I'm literally giving you the best argument I could possibly think of. Like, at least give me the chance to try. And again, I think that goes back to like DMs setting expectations for players. I know when I ran the first game for you guys, and when I run games now, one of the things I always tell people is like, don't ask me for rolls unless I am clearly missing something that like I just didn't get. Like I tell players they can ask for rolls if we've already like, if it's clear that I've already moved past the thing and you missed what you wanted to do. But you shouldn't be like, as we're having a conversation as an NPC and player, you shouldn't be actively asking me, okay, well, I want to roll for intimidation. Okay, well, you haven't said 3 words to me and I'm not scared of you. Like,
yeah, exactly.
That's a big one for me.
What about metagaming?
Oh God. Metagaming is hard, okay? I think that there is an appropriate level of metagaming that is called strategy.
Yes. And it's a thin line. I think that's where people get confused, right?
Strategy is different than metagaming. As a party, you would know what your skills, especially if you're a party that's been together, you know what everybody can do, right? You've seen each other in combat. You've seen each other talking. You've probably slept on the road together for 400 nights. You know, like, you know things about these people that you wouldn't know from the average person. That would be like if you and I got lost in the forest, I would know what skill sets you could bring and you know what skill sets I could bring. None.
Exactly. We're going to stay lost until somebody finds us.
Right. Exactly. We would have a great time, but we would be lost. You know, I think that there's a level of understanding that is called strategy, right? I know that you can cast X, Y, and Z spells. So while we're not in game and we're like, hey, I think you should do this, I personally don't think that that's metagaming. I think it's strategy. I think it's metagaming when someone is trying to make a decision and it is their character in that decision and you don't know any better. Like, you're not talking to them. They can't talk to you. You're in combat, whatever the case may be. There is a moment of that player has to make that decision and you shouldn't be telling them what to do. That's metagaming.
Yeah, and that's pretty much my stand. If your character isn't in a position that they understand or even hear what's going on, you shouldn't be saying anything. That's just me. Like, that part bothers me. But again, like, there is strategy to it, obviously.
Yes.
And I would just prefer it be done in character. If you were like, do you think that's a good idea? Maybe we should try it this way.
There's a level of, how do I say this without like completely... There's a level of metagaming that is just fun. So in my, hopefully my DM doesn't see this, but we have a chat of just players, like a private chat on Discord where while we're playing, we'll be like, oh shit, this is going down. Like, who's got fireball ready? Who's got this ready? We're like, it's metagaming, Kind of, because we're out of character talking about what we're doing next, but it's really nothing like that's game changing. It's all like combat stuff. We're not like going around and using outside knowledge. Like, we're not like, this is where I think metagaming comes in. If you have played, I don't know, Waterdeep, let's just use the Waterdeep module. If I've played Waterdeep and now you and I are playing Waterdeep together and I know what happens and I'm telling you, Scala, make sure you cast this spell specifically on this person, that's cheating, which is metagaming.
Yeah. That's like the extreme version of it.
If you and I were like in a game and you were like a new player and you were like, holy shit, I have all these spells and I don't know what to cast. And I was like, hey, you have 3 really good options here. I don't see that as metagaming. I just see that as like,
that's more strategy.
It's guidance. Like, you also want to enjoy it, right? Like, my first ever, and the same DM, Ian, always told us, he's like, we play online and we roll real dice. There's no checks and balance system. And he always said, if you want to cheat, then you're just cheating yourself. Like, the game is designed to be fun. And if cheating is fun for you, then that's fine. Like, if you want to fake your dice and you want to cheat and you want to metagame, it's on you. Yeah. I don't like it at the table. I think it's annoying when people like sit in front of you and are like actively metagaming, and it's like, just like, be smart about it. Like, send a text message.
Yeah, that, you know, like, if it doesn't hurt the story or it's not pulling the players like out of what's actually going on, I don't see an issue with it. But like you said, if you know the story already, right, that's different. And then at that point, I don't even understand why you would want to play it if you were just gonna, if you already know the outcome. And I'm not, I mean, it happens. The other thing is, I think it takes away the autonomy of players, especially players who aren't like vocally as strong. You know, like, if I was just telling you, like, oh, Scala, do this, you'll never learn to do anything and make choices on your own. And then the next game you play where I'm not in it, no one's going to be making those choices for you. So it kind of, like, has longer term effects than just, It's also, it's definitely also, like you said, it's guidance. It's a coaching. So something like me and VTM where, we just finished up
we finished our one shot.
But there was a point in which I was like, all right, well, there's all these tentacles. I feel like this vampire is probably stronger than me, but I literally don't know what to do here. So, like, situations like that, it's, if somebody, like, nudges me in a certain direction,
that was kind of hard because, like, no one had played vampires before.
Yeah, that was
like,
different.
I tried to put it in by being like, you know what this is because you are also a Lasombra, but... Yeah, say like one of the other characters was like, oh no, like that's Ob 10-3, like that's really strong, get away. I wouldn't have cared because, like, exactly. That's a little different. But, I think strategy is okay. I think metagaming is a hard line to find that balance. I really do. That's one that I don't like, but it doesn't drive me like crazy until people start using things. And it really only happens to me in play-by-post servers, not in game.
Yeah, I guess it's a lot easier with play-by-post.
Right, because you can see so in play-by-post servers, you can see like what everyone is doing. So imagine being able to see and read actively what the villains are doing while you're doing your thing, and then trying not to use the villain information to fuel what you do. That shit pisses me off. Like, that above all else. I've gotten into fights with people because I'm like, that's literally metagaming. Like, you know what I was doing, and now you actively went and made a plan against this, a plan that you had no idea. Like,
there's no way your character would have known
or your character would have even imagined that my character was able to do that thing. You know what I'm saying? That bothers me. But I think it's hard to metagame at a table. I just think it's frustrating when people do it for like extended periods of time, and it's like, just stop talking. Like, just play the game.
Yeah, I definitely think play-by-post too. Like, even if you look at something, let's say you built a character for Magic U, and it was kind of, you had this dark secret that only one other character knows, but everybody read it. If you as a separate character are trying to like pry that out of them now,
then
like you wouldn't know.
Yeah, I hate that. And that's what I'm saying is that like writing it is a lot. Like, this accent thing for me, no one knows about it. One, because there's nowhere for people to just go actively read it, right? They can't just be like, oh, Vixen has a fake accent. Weird. I'm going to get that out of her. Where in play-by-post, you can see that. Yeah. You can see what people's information is. And don't care for that. But I don't know. Again, it's one of those things that's like, some people think that it's strategy. Like, I've literally gotten into those arguments. People are like, no, it's just me being smart if I have access to it. And it's like, that's like saying if you had the cheat code to a game, do you just automatically use it and not play the game?
Yeah,
like, what's
exactly.
the point?
Like, you weren't that smart 5 minutes ago before we wrote it, so you're not that smart now.
Right, exactly. Because you would have thought about it before I thought about it, and you would have put it in play. Another table etiquette thing, being late.
Yes.
Punctuality is a huge thing that I think people take for granted. Because let me tell you, there is always like a good 20 minutes of bullshitting, no matter what game you're playing, no matter. So like you being late just like makes that bullshit time go longer. I
have noticed that. And I get it. It's fun when you first get on like a voice chat, let's say, and you're just kind of like talking, like kind of, it's kind of like stretching, like you're getting warmed up. But if you showed up 15 minutes late and you missed that, and then you just start
and then you start bullshitting on top of it. Yeah. And again, it's not like you can never be late. People are late all the time. Life happens. But I just mean like there's people who are habitually late, and that's just generic common courtesy stuff. But on that same note, canceling sessions.
Yeah.
And leaving and not attending sessions. I think is a huge.
Yeah, and life happens, right? So
100%.
So even as a player, right? And in one of our campaigns that I'm in with Allie, I had a kind of like a family emergency thing. I just wasn't up for it, and I had to cancel. You just don't want to make that a habit, and you really should kind of like apologize to the DM.
Right.
Because then the DM is they're gonna have to kind of either do something different with the story that they didn't plan to do originally, or depending on the situation, they might have to cancel a session altogether.
Yeah, and that does happen is if like one or two players don't show up and you have a small game, session gets canceled, and it kind of like screws everybody else up. And again, we're not saying that like D&D and tabletop games are more important than your life, because obviously they're not.
Yeah, they're equally as important.
Yeah, obviously. Tell the other things in your life to wait. No.
Yeah.
But it is rude to make it a habit to not show up or be habitually late or habitually cancel sessions, which is actually something that happened in a game recently with Scala and I. We actually lost a game because of it, because the person running it was canceling it.
Yeah.
Like almost weekly. Like it was getting to a point we were at like I think 4 times out of the 8 sessions we had maybe.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the fact that it got canceled that personally bothered me.
Yeah,
it was the reasons and the amount of notice that kind of I think drove the game.
We got less. The notice was all within 24 hours. The one was like 4 hours before our session.
Yeah.
And for not an emergency, don't get me wrong, I would not be mad if they were like, hey, even if it was like my internet's at least lie to me and make it sound good.
Yeah, exactly. Because then you're kind of telling me you're not interested in the game and you don't care about my time.
Or my time. That's the thing that's like, and not to get super into it because we've just been dealing with it all week, but right now, a lot of us are not working or working from home or have more flexible times, but we play with people in that game who are still working full time and going to jobs and are losing money because these games are getting canceled and they're staying home to play this game and not out working.
Yeah, and which as a DM, right, if I had a player that even brought that to me, I not only feel kind of like, I was like, oh, this person is losing money to play this game. Like, obviously they're invested in the game. Let me do everything I possibly can to make sure, this doesn't happen again. And they know I appreciate the fact that, they may have lost money because of a game that didn't happen, stuff like that.
No one would make a deal about quote unquote losing money if there was some effort made.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah.
So I think that that's a big thing, is just being punctual and being able to tell people when you're not going to be able to play. I have a DM, again, same DM, not this one. Ian, he travels all the time, but
Ian
like
the God.
Ian, he travels all the time, but he always gives us at least a week's notice, unless it's some like emergency thing where he's like, hey guys, I gotta
Yes.
oh, they're putting me on a plane today, I can't play.
And that's like above and beyond. If you give a week notice, I don't think any of your players would complain. Because again, life happens.
We're always upset because he's great and we just want to play. But like, you know, it's never like his fault. He has a job and he always tells us a week in advance. And a lot of times we set up our own like one-shot games where we still hang out and we still talk, but...
Oh, that's a good idea, actually, if you do have a game that gets... Yeah.
Yeah, we do that because I can run games. The one girl, she's a great DM. She runs a bunch of games. So, like, we always have something if people are interested, but it's nice that, like, he cares enough to be like, hey, guys, I don't want to screw you over. So, like, here's a whole week. And I try to do, you know, the same thing. I mean, I try never to miss a game. But if I do, I try to tell people, like, way in advance.
I don't remember if we mentioned this, but it's the same thing as if you have to fall out of a game, or if, you know, maybe your work schedule changed and doesn't line up with the game, don't drag it along and just like cancel session after session. Just bring it up and apologize. Say,
and, you know, don't just not show up.
Yeah, don't do
That's
that
a weird one to me. It's just like, especially if it's online, just leave the server. Like, no one... There's even, like, online, you can even be rude about it. I'm not saying you should, but, like, if you're just not a confrontation person, you can literally just, like, leave the server that you're on.
Yeah, and that'll convey your message pretty clear.
Yeah, like, I find that super weird that people don't do that.
Yep. All that to say, be punctual, be respectful of other people's time and what they have going on, and... Again, don't ruin the game for everybody, and then it could be very stressful. And I think kind of what happened, just referring back to our situation, was it kind of built up over time. And like, yes, like some of us probably could have brought it up, but we didn't realize it was becoming a problem until it was already a problem. And then it was just kind of this thing. Well, you know, at least for me, it was like, all right, well, you know, if nobody has a problem with it, maybe I'm just.
Maybe I'm
dramatic, and then we realized that wasn't the case, and we're just kind of like, all right. And then the response we got when it was brought up was kind of the hardest part for me personally, because it was just kind of one of those things that was like, it doesn't even seem like
you care.
You care that, you know, somebody brought up these issues.
And then we somehow got blamed that like we were asking for more like consistent schedule, even though we were never the ones canceling.
Yeah, I did cancel one session, but again, it was a family type of emergency, and I just, you know, again, like,
were you even gonna not come? Because I remember texting you and you'd be like, sorry, I was just out of it, and I was like, why don't you just not come to the game?
Yeah, I was gonna still try and do it, but I was talking to Allie about it, and I think you actually ended up telling them for me.
You. Yeah, I was like,
because I wouldn't have been there. Like, I just wouldn't have, like, you know, like the accent wouldn't work. It's really hard for me to get in like character if I'm not, you know, in the right headspace. So
So and even again, then, like, because I really don't, because I remember you being like, yeah, I'll be on fall. I just might be a few minutes late, and then I was like, why bother coming? Like, you know, so, and like we said, life is important, family is important, obviously. So, you know, it happens. And that situation was just, it ended up being a mess, a whole mess with a lot of arguing. But to, I think, kind of round out where we stand with all of this, you know, I think there's a lot of table etiquette, but I think the number one thing is just respect to the DM and to your other players. Yes. I have been in games where players have argued with DMs, and I don't mean like disagreements where you question the ruling of something. I mean like players who have straight up like screamed at DMs and been like, that's not how the rule works, blah 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 blah, blah. Like,
see, that I don't think you, even if you have a question about, you know, maybe if you don't agree with the decision they made, I think that's something that should be said one-on-one. That's not something you should bring up in front of like an entire
It's super weird when people do it, because I don't think I've ever had something where I've brought it up. Like, I'm trying to think, maybe I've said something, but in that game that got canceled. But that's after like not being respected the other way too. Yeah. You know, and I think that that's what happens is when respect isn't both ways, it boils up and it becomes, you know, a much bigger problem. Like, just going back to that game, I remember being asked something specifically like, what do you want this weapon to do? And answering it 3 times.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, if you're asking for information I'm giving to you, and then you're either forgetting it or losing it. Or
ignoring it, that it's like, I'm not going to respect you. So, again, it's probably not in the right, but it happens. Yep. But I think it's important, and we sort of talked about respecting other players, like not talking over them, not steamrolling, not taking the attention for yourself. Listen, that's
what about limits? Like,
setting
like hard limits and stuff.
Yeah, like that. Limits. Okay. limits are things that I think, particularly in today's day and age, do need to be discussed. You don't know what's going to trigger somebody. You don't know. And really the problem is it's a little different when you're in person, because you can actually see how someone responds to something. It's a lot harder online to know. And a lot of times you don't know the people online, right? Like, you know, things in my life that would trigger me if I
things
if
I
I
just
had
naturally
a trigger.
wouldn't bring it up. Yeah.
Right. You know, I don't really have any. So, but if something traumatic happened to me, you would know that thing is not a thing you would bring up. If we were two strangers online, you wouldn't know those things. So I think it's super important to always ask your players if you plan on having a game that has any sort of trigger content. Yeah. That you should ask your players. I typically play characters and run characters that are more sexually
not safe for work.
Awakened? I don't know what the word is. Yeah, I do typically have characters that like say raunchy I never do anything like weird in character, but I always like say raunchy things. I think like the first time we ever played Burning Wheel, I like made a joke about Thea like sleeping with like 500 men or something. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that there's people that are not comfortable with that. And I think that if you are going to play a character like that, you know that you have a player that will play like that, or you plan on playing a game where there are trigger warning things. I think you need to set those limits. Yeah, and I think that's important for anybody who hasn't played D&D. If you do have something like that, there are systems in place for that. It's, you know, if you had something traumatic happen to you and you're worried about it being in a game, that's just something you should bring up before entering the game to your DM. Yeah, I agree. They'll set limits and they'll let everybody kind of know. Believe Allie did that for Magic U for us, and we all messaged her and stuff like that, and then, you know, and I kept it private. I didn't like tell anybody what anyone's triggers were. I think it's super important, because I think if you put it out there, sometimes people won't answer as honestly. So I just had everyone message me, and I was like, hey, listen, like, I'll block all the channels that have trigger warning stuff, and if you want to read it, like, just know this has your trigger warning on it, so feel free to read it, but don't tell me that I didn't tell you, you know. And it's actually, even on Discord, that there's stuff you could do. Like, I think we had something today or yesterday where Emma had something, and she put like trigger warning, and then she did it as a whisper, so you'd have to click on it in order to see what it said. There's things you could do in place to kind of respect other players. And I think that's important. Again, on DM and player side, because I think it's important to know as players. And I think that's why a lot of people put it public, is so other players can see it. Yeah. You know, but I think if you set an expectation, listen, I don't think most D&D games have a lot of trigger warnings. No. I think it's when you start getting into like Vampire the Masquerade and those things that are like on those darker themes. I could definitely see, that like Vampire the Masquerade's got some like dark I can't see a VTM game that wouldn't be somewhat dark, you know. It's kind of built into the culture. It's over sexualized. It's obviously they're monsters that kill humans when when they give over to the beast. So it's really not like a, you know, and like a lot of the merits and flaws are like detrimental things to society. Like there's you know, merits where like you only kill children, or merits flaws where you only kill children, you know, and there's people who just aren't okay with that, and you know, that's not particularly things that I like to play or read about. So it's important to tell people that like you don't want those things in your game, or you're not comfortable playing with it. Some people are crazy and they'll do whatever. They'll run those kind of games. But yeah, I think it's also on you as a player to kind of think about the system that you're using. So, you know, if I have an issue with people who talk about blood and I get like queasy when people talk about blood, I'm not going to go into VTM. Exactly. Game, because then what kind, you know, you're not really giving the DM much room to, like, what are they supposed to do? Like replace it with something? Well, and then you get into that weird world of like, you're just playing like Second Life. Like now you're just like using this as an excuse to like talk to people, which is like, there's other like forums for that. There's other platforms for that, you know. I think triggers are a big one. I think that wraps up my like table etiquette stuff. Respect is the biggest one. Have fun. You know, don't be rude to each other. Like, it's just so hard when I hate when people argue at the table about things that are super irrelevant. It makes me so uncomfortable. And I like to argue, and it makes me uncomfortable.
And you're good at it.
Check out our Instagram to see my good lying and arguing. But I think as far as that goes, table etiquette is just remember that if you have questions, make sure you ask your DM and or players, depending on what side you're on, and respect each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much it.
So that's it for table etiquette. Now going into our next segment that we continue. And, last time we talked about combat wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
This time we are bringing in another guest.
Ooh, who is it? Who is it, Allie?
Some dude.
Some dude.
Some dude. So Mitch is going to be our guest today. We're just going to take a moment for him to come in and get set up. All right. So today we have our fourth and final member of Big Deck Energy, Mitchell. Woo!
Woo!
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, Mitch.
Hi, how's
Welcome
it going?
to the table.
I'm on the podcast.
I know. Are you super excited?
Ooh, yes, very excited.
Are you nervous?
Yeah, a little bit.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
Like 3.
Did Sarah give you
Plus
any
10.
advice?
No, she didn't.
Wow.
Sarah
terrible.
didn't give me any advice.
So,
get that
just so
nice
you guys
and
know,
close.
Mitch is kind of like our Reddit correspondent as well.
Oh, am I really?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Yeah, because we can't function with Reddit.
Yeah.
That's the worst job title I've ever heard in my entire life.
You know that if someone paid you to be a Reddit correspondent, you would do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
You do it
yeah,
for free
yeah.
right now.
No.
Not for free.
Wait, but before we get into the Reddit stuff, really I do want to hit the rewind button here because
What?
Vixen has a secret accent.
Oh.
Mitch plays in the game on Tuesday nights. So remember I was telling you that Eden messaged me about the game and blah, 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 and I was working on something and I didn't know. Yep.
How does it feel to sit on a throne of lies? That's what I want to know.
Well, it feels real good.
Uh-huh. Wait, was that a preview?
Maybe.
Oh, God. They're going to be so mad.
They're going to be so
They're going to
mad.
be so mad in that game.
I'm full of secrets. Anyway, Mitchell. So we went over. So today is our horror-themed topic.
Ooh, scary.
Ooh, scary. So horror-themed topic. We went over a few options for news, and we were going to do Reddit horror stories because, man, they are hilarious. But we figured we have enough horror stories of our own.
Absolutely.
So we really didn't need Reddit for it. We do have some of our friends that wrote into us on our Discord that if we have time, I will pull them up. But we, just like everybody else, we know about the new book that's coming out that I almost said that D&D is releasing. The Wizards of the Coast is releasing. Tasha's Cauldron of Everything.
Everything.
Not to be confused with Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So Mitch, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on with this?
What's going on with it?
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit?
Yeah. How's the community reacting?
community?
Well, I mean, to the content itself, the community is reacting fine to it. They were a little upset with the method of release of the information.
What happened, Mr.
so-
Reddit?
Mr. Reddit.
That's the worst. That's the worst. I believe Wizards, what they did was they cut up all this information about what is going to be inside Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Not the details, but the general table of contents. And they gave all that information to a bunch of different quote-unquote influencers, podcast, Twitter personalities.
We didn't get any, guys. Don't worry.
Oh, no.
All 33 of you.
Yep. Sorry.
And then they disseminated the information that way. So instead of having one nice spot where you get to go see what's there, you have to, go to 35 different Twitter profiles to get one little nugget of the information, which is different than the little nugget they gave the other Twitter profile.
Right.
So that caused a little bit of mild annoyance in the community on the subreddit.
But we found...
Oh, yeah, somebody took the time to put it all together in one nice bullet-pointed post there.
Reddit post.
Yeah, thank you to whoever that was. I don't know.
I had heard. I think it was. I don't really know if it was a her, but them. So a little bit about this. We're not gonna get super into like what the book has. I think
definitely not yet.
We're gonna like just go over some of the stuff that they released, and then we'll talk a little bit about the way that they released it, and then we'll share some of those horror stories before we move on. Yeah. So Tasha's Cauldron to Everything. Do love the name. Not gonna lie, super about it. It's pretty good.
Tasha's cool.
Tasha's cool.
Her laughter is hideous, but
Tasha's laughter is hideous. That is correct. It comes out November 17th, which is the day before my mom's birthday. If anybody was curious, she will not want this book for her birthday, but she might get it.
happy birthday. 4
chapters on character options, spells, and magic items, group patrons, and tools for dungeon masters. And, it goes into all these things. Classes and subclasses are getting a whole new revamp. Races, I think they're finally changing a lot of the stuff that, like, people were kind of worked up about. I don't really know because I didn't read the race stuff. Oh, yeah, they did officially say removal of negative racial modifiers from kobolds and orcs from Volo's Guide to Monsters. So that's actually happening.
Oh, that's official. Oh,
it's
okay.
official, which is funny because we were talking about it on our Discord yesterday.
Yeah.
We're not going to get into the whole argument right now, but I actually didn't realize that only 2 races had negative things to it. Which I thought it was I knew the playable races didn't. I knew that the original playable races were all just like positive things. Like I knew it was like.
And that I think that's the issue is I never, maybe this is just me being new. I never really looked at orcs as.
Well, they weren't a playable race. I mean, none of those. So like orcs, kobolds, lizard folk, all of that. That's only recently.
Tabaxi probably.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I think Tabaxi were in. They were like one of the first not the original playable races. Like I don't. Are they in the player's handbook?
Yeah, that's where I.
Oh, then
no, they're not.
I'm pretty sure they.
I don't think so.
What did I build?
Well,
I can't remember.
Anyway, kids.
But I know they were one of the first.
They're definitely one of the first
editions, maybe, yeah.
out of the editions.
I don't remember
Either way.
negative modifiers though.
There are no negative modifiers for the original playable. The only classes, which re-looking at it yesterday, which again is naivety on my part, our orcs and kobolds are the only 2 that had negative modifiers, and the positive modifiers were not enough to justify the negative modifiers. Like I could understand if they were like. Orcs get +5 strength and +3 constitution and -2 to what was it, intelligence or something?
Yeah.
Okay, because then there's a little bit of a balance system there where everyone else is only getting +2 in general, but they only get +2 to strength and +1 to con and still got a -2 to intelligence, which at that point you're really only getting a +1.
Yeah, net gain of +1.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. And then kobolds have nothing. They're just like -2 to strength. Because they're teeny tiny.
It's like they don't want you to play a kobold.
And I think that there's some of that there's truth to it, right? Is that they're supposed to be the creatures originally when the game was written that you're supposed to be fighting. So there's supposed to be negatives to that because you're supposed to be the hero. Back to that, like you being the main character thing. So they are officially changing that, which is interesting. There's a bunch of spells here.
Did you look at that little nugget under Warlock? Now
the genie?
The genie patron.
The genie patron.
Ooh.
I always love
That's
new patrons.
literally Jafar. Right?
I guess, yeah, technically.
Doesn't that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you could be Jafar. Now my Disney creations are coming together smoothly.
There you go.
What does Bard have? College of Creation. Ooh. Can animate objects. Okay. It's kind of about that, I'm not gonna lie. College of Eloquence.
The one thing I'm kind of interested in is where it says under races, it says players can create completely new custom lineages disconnected from anything in the player's handbook with a fill in the blanks template.
Well, that sounds cool.
Yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. That'll be exciting to see how they do that, like what the stipulations are of what are the limitations. Like, do you have to take negatives if you take a certain amount of positives?
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I mean?
And just to circle back real quick, I didn't realize that. Like, so if it's just that, if the issue is that kobolds and orcs were just not balanced, and that's why they're changing, like, I feel like that's understandable. I just didn't realize it because I never thought of playing an orc because I hate orcs. So I would never, I never really looked into it.
And let's clarify that you hate all just high. You're just not into high fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. Like
so anything outside of anything that's like super mythological, you just.
I mean, I'm okay with like dwarves, but it's because they're like entertaining to me. You know, they're.
Scala.
You know, I don't know. It's weird. There's just something. I think it's because even elves. I don't know. Elves kind of bother me too. I don't know.
You don't like
maybe,
no Legolas in your life?
I don't know. It's just for some reason
Orly
orcs
Bloom
bother me more. But I also played it Tabaxi, so.
Let me just commend you on your choice of podcast to host, being somebody that hates high fantasy.
He doesn't hate it thematically.
I know. I'm just.
It is funny though that like of all things. Well, I mean, he never said D&D was like his favorite thing, right? This is we're generalizing. It's just that D&D is the most popular.
I like that cannibal game that we played.
We're getting there.
That's my favorite.
We played other games. I am super into high fantasy, so I can see why people want to play those.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for me, I think that there's two reasons. I like playing characters that I can relate to. So to be honest, like I typically play humanoid characters. Like I usually play I play like human, elf, tiefling.
Mm-hmm.
My range is I've played all different characters, but those are like the ones that I like to play.
That's like your wheelhouse, yeah.
Yeah, it's my wheelhouse. I don't have a problem with people wanting to play them, and I think some people like making like really fun. We played one time with someone who played a kobold who was like a monk paladin.
That's funny.
Yeah, like it was entertaining. It was fun. Something I think that's super cool on here that I was reading about earlier. Two things is group patrons. So each group patron option comes with its own perks and types of assignment. Group patrons are powerful NPCs, and then sidekicks. Who's hyped for sidekicks?
Oh, sidekicks! That sounds cool.
Interesting.
I backed a Kickstarter by Matt Colville not too long ago that was Strongholds and Followers, which was kind of like, or is kind of like what sidekicks are. So he basically made this whole book that was like, if you have a stronghold, these are all the benefits you get from it, and these are the types of followers that come with them. So our DM uses that in our game.
That's something I would be interested in.
It's super fun.
See, that's the thing, and it goes back to kind of the high fan. Like I just need detail. Like it needs to make sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, it's the same thing with like movies. Like if I just think sometimes high fantasy makes it too easy to kind of explain something, and
like
that's my issue.
Right, where it's
because magic.
Exactly,
magic,
and that's my issue. If there's like rules to it, and you can kind of explain it makes more sense to me.
Yeah, I can get that. So in that one, he had strongholds and followers, and you literally had followers. And this is kind of like a similar take to that. It's NPCs that either the DM or the PCs can run, and they're literally sidekicks. They were first introduced in the UA, the Unearthed Arcana, and later printed in the Essentials kit. They're NPCs controlled by DM or players. They can be customized. There's a sidekick class intended for new players or players who want a chill experience. So, like, you can even play as a sidekick. If you really want to run that game where you want to be not the main character, you can run as the sidekick.
That might be a good option for new players.
Yeah.
Who, want to rely on other people.
Yeah, they could lean on somebody. Maybe if somebody's bringing them into the game, they could play like their sidekick.
Oh, you're my sidekick.
Come and
I think it's cool.
There are group dynamics in every game too. Sometimes maybe this will be good for already existing games where somebody can kind of take on that sidekick role that they were already kind of playing in.
I think so. I think there's games where like naturally characters develop those relationships. I play games where like someone ended up being my bodyguard, and it's like we didn't start like that, but that's how we've evolved, into protector and
absolutely.
I actually like when stuff like that kind of happens, when there's kind of characters that are linked to.
It's super awesome. It's like one of my favorite things is like I feel like I always try to find someone in every game that I like my character like latches onto for some reason. It also helps if like they die in game that you get like super emotional about it. Like in our game, the paladin and I are super close.
Yeah.
Like if anything happens to him, my character will.
And we just had a PC death.
We did just have a PC death.
That was very sad.
Rip Elendar.
Bye Elendar.
So all that to say, this is coming out November 17th. Very exciting. The content looks good. I am always a huge fan of all this UA stuff when it comes out. I'm not going to lie. I don't think there's ever been one that's been released where I've been like, I've enjoyed them all. I think it's always cool that they're like expanding and that you get options, because eventually you get to a point where like you know what you like to play. Mm-hmm. So it's nice that there's other options. Like I feel like I've played every type of bard possible. So it's nice like now I'll be able to try something else.
Even from a spectator point too, like seeing somebody else play something like
different.
22 new subclasses and stuff like that gives you more options.
It's going to be fun.
I like to look at the pictures in the new books. That's about it.
Do you look at the pictures on Reddit too?
No, I didn't. I didn't see any art for this yet.
It's just a joke, Mr. Reddit.
Oh.
He takes Reddit seriously, okay?
God.
I know.
How did I get this title again?
Because we don't know how to use Reddit.
Because I have a Reddit account? Like
that's literally
Mitch,
the only qualification.
I don't know people
guarantee
that
you Sarah has a Reddit account.
She does.
Yeah.
And she like goes on like Desperate Housewives or something like that. Roasted.
Oh, defend that to the end.
The Real Housewives. I'm so sorry. Whatever.
That is a great piece of modern literature.
Whatever. Housewives. I got the Housewives part right.
I'm sure the Reddit community is thriving for that, by the way.
Thriving.
I'd say there is a Reddit for everything.
There is.
Literally.
I love Reddit. I'm just not super versed in it. Like you were like, go find this thing on Reddit. I was like, I can't find it. That's all you, bud. So I think that there was some pushback with how it was released. I don't really see it as a big deal. I think it's annoying the way they released it, but I can get behind the idea of them trying to form like a community where it's like, oh, look at all of these like D&D influencers, like go follow all of them that aren't just Critical Role. You know what I'm saying? So like I get the idea behind it. I get Wizards of the Coast trying to be more like all encompassing and find other people to help and be like, oh, there's all these different types of gamers. If you like this type of person, they play role play heavy, they do this thing, they play, whatever.
And it's not like it was hard to find all the information. You just had to wait for somebody else to put it all together for you.
Yeah. I think it's frustrating. I just don't think that it was like as big of a deal as people made it.
My thing is, it's definitely not a big deal. Like you said, I mean, somebody put it together in like how many days? So it's
right.
The negatives are
like
counteracted. I just think it was
ago.
a bad marketing strategy. Like I just think it wasn't a smart move, and it was bound to kind of piss some people off.
I think everything pisses people off.
Yeah, exactly.
Like no matter what they did, if they gave it to one content creator, it would piss people off. If they released it themselves, people would be like, "Oh, it's unoriginal. They're just doing it the way they always." Like it just.
But see, my thing is like, what if I don't know? Like, I'm new to the community. Yeah, I don't know many of the people involved in D&D, let's say. Like, am I just not going to get the information because it's released from somebody that I don't know? I have to wait for like D&D Beyond to retweet it before I could see it or something like that.
Let me to interject here. I think that an aspect of it probably that does bother some people as well is there's kind of like this, this idea of influencers and YouTubers and getting your information through them. That's all like very new media kind of thing.
I agree.
That's true.
And D&D, there's definitely going to be this aspect of don't change my D&D, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
kind of thing going on.
The naturalist perspective.
Also,
like
the kind of nice things about D&D a lot of times is that it does take out the digital part of it. So
right,
I can see the pushback with it, but you also have to understand that if those people who are still pushing back on it, they're still going to the internet for the information, right? Like D&D is not, or D&D Wizards of the Coast isn't printing like they're not printing this out and putting it in the newspaper,
right? Yeah,
so like no matter what, you're still going to the internet for the information. Really, you could just wait till November 17th and buy it.
Yeah, it's not.
You know what
it's
I mean?
Definitely
Like,
not
it's
the biggest
not
of deals. My question would be: are these influencers people involved in the actual creation of the content? Because if not, then I might have a problem with it.
I'm sure they're not.
Because I feel like, I mean, if anything, you should have the people who created it, or even if the illustrators of the artwork, like give them a chance to kind of be like.
I think
hey,
the problem
is
that they're typically not the influencers, right? Like they're not. They're not the people that have thousands of followers that it'll reach. And like that's really the sin of it is a lot of times the people that work on it are also not the same people that people would call influencers. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but you'd rather give it to Matt Colville. I don't know if he had any of it, but he's like a D&D influencer. You'd rather give it to him where he's going to reach 1 million people than the person who drew the cover work who's going to reach 5,000.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, it kind of goes against my point that I made earlier. It'd be harder for me to find if somebody
if it was somebody who was like
true.
super small. So I think there's pros and cons. I think, listen, someone put it together. It worked for us.
Thank you, whoever you are.
Yeah, thank you, Reddit user. I wish I had your Reddit thingy on here.
We can see if we can find it and maybe drop it in.
Yeah, Reddit person.
Yeah.
I can find it right now because I'm gonna go on Discord to read you this little story we got.
Right.
We got a story.
We got a story.
Some VAS.
Story
Is that
time.
what we're going into?
Yeah. So
you guys had some VAS
this is
week.
from our friend John, who watches our podcast. Thanks, John, for writing in.
He plays the funniest characters too. I
He
love
is
his characters.
awesome. He's a great role player. He's just super fun. So we told him that so he's on our Discord. We were talking about how, horror stories is like the thing we're going with this week. And he goes, hey, do you want me to tell you some horror stories that I had? Absolutely. So, and he did a very good job of like summing them up super quick. So I briefly read them, but I wanted to be genuinely surprised. So I like skimmed them. So we'll see. So I don't really know what I'm about to read. Katie is his wife. Katie made it through about 2 sessions before she dropped out. Now she's not the most outgoing person in the world, but I firmly believe that it is the DM's job to not just arbitrate on the rules, but make sure that all players at the table get a chance playing and in the spotlight. Talked about that.
Yeah.
First session, she got to do 3 things. One was decide on the gong being her musical instrument. The other 2 were to roll to see if she hit the gong. All that in a 5-hour session. Second day was even less, and she just called it quits because she didn't feel like she was being included.
That's rough. That's almost hard to do. How do you like willfully exclude somebody that much?
Yeah, and
That's
even
crazy.
if it wasn't like, even if part of the issue was, I mean, as a first time player, you're not going to know what to do as much, so you kind of need that guidance.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I don't know. I do have to say that's kind of, you're probably a shitty DM if you didn't pick up on that. And
Yeah.
I mean,
or you were doing it on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Still a
if
shitty
that's
DM.
that's ridiculous. Like in a 5-hour session, that's
crazy, right?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if she did go back to another. Like, why would you want to?
This was his story, so this is a little bit more on the he called it the typical stereotypical story. So he said this was more of a stereotypical that guy story. It was a long table, like one of those 3x9 fold out lunchroom almost tables. Dude had started about a month ago and was very bad stereotype. Was every bad stereotype you could have. Came in with fingerless gloves, past the knee duster coat, mid-shin boots with lots of buckles, and his pants tucked into them. Once he got to the point he felt comfortable talking with everyone, he decided the height of humor was yelling racist jokes down to the other end of the table. That was my realization that probably nope out of this place and probably start looking for online games. The doubly worst part is how oblivious he was. Nobody at the table except the one guy laughed, and this was a very mixed race setting. So not only do you get the opportunity to tell the world that you're racist, you also stand a good chance of getting your ass beat for being a douchebag. Racist is bad enough, but stupid racist is way worse.
Nobody gets beat up while wearing fingerless gloves, okay?
Wow. So
thanks, John,
the
for sharing
conversation
those
we had
stories.
yesterday in our Discord makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah.
Because that is an example, and it was coming from the DM in that story.
Which one?
The second story?
The second
racist
story,
comments? Or
was a player.
The DM didn't
That's all
do
he
anything?
sent me.
See, I just don't understand how you're that comfortable even doing something like that.
Listen, some people don't get it. Like, we played in a game where, like, the person just did not get it. Just
Are we talking?
Yeah, Brian.
Oh,
just did not get it. Like, he's one of those people I told you that would argue with the DM, and it was just, oh my God, so uncomfortable. He got mad that he tried to, I think the worst story for me was he tried to intimidate somebody, and the guy was so scared that he didn't answer the questions, and then I charmed him, and because he was relaxed, he answered the questions. And he flipped the hell out on the DM. He was like, intimidation should work. And he's like, well, you did intimidate him. You intimidated him so much that he's scared of you and he doesn't want to talk to you.
Which is a reasonable
outcome.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And then he's like, she cast a spell and charmed him and is flirting with him. Like, obviously he's going to talk to her versus the dude that's holding a knife to him when he thinks you're going to kill him anyway. Like, why give you information if you're going to kill him?
Yeah, and why would you, like, there should be different approaches to a situation,
Right.
and some of them should work and some of them shouldn't. That's the point of the game. Like, if anything you do is just going to work, like, if you would just intimidate everybody and just end the
Right,
game.
and people react differently to different... It's just like the trigger thing, right? Like, people react differently to different things. Like, if I was hitting on somebody who was not attracted to my whatever race, gender, whatever I was at the time, because I don't remember, you know, like, then it shouldn't work no matter how convincing I am.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it's just not their preference, it just shouldn't work. They could be nice to me. Yeah. But, man.
We could fill a podcast with horror stories about that game.
I feel like we could just have life of horror stories of games. But thank you, John, for writing into me. Absolutely. Better than going to Reddit. So check out Tasha's Cauldron of Everything coming out November 17th, 2020.
I'm sure we will have some sort of...
when we get closer.
...episode about it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. When we get closer, when it comes out, I buy lots of books.
So I can look at all the pictures.
Yes, just so Mitch can look at pictures. And thank you to John. And if you guys join our Discord and you want to talk about your horror stories, we have a whole section where we would just go off and we just talk shit about things.
Brian, if you're out there, thank you as well.
Join our Discord. What if he's watching?
He might be watching. Hey, Brian.
See an angry comment as soon as we upload it.
He knew he had some bad table etiquette. He would ask me. He would be like, if I'm being like a douche, like, just let me know.
Yeah, well, I guess it's good to know.
There were so many times where like the DM would be like RPing with you and Sarah, and he'd be like, he would start getting like upset, like pacing, because he was like, I want my turn now, and I'd just be like, just relax, it's all right.
Mitch is a very calming person. If you guys couldn't tell.
So he had main character syndrome as well. Then.
Yeah, he had a lot of yeah. Well, speaking of more horror stories, let's move on to games that we played. Yeah,
sounds good.
Horror games. So the topic came up this week was because we decided to play horror games, kind of. Yeah. Kind of how we like
almost accidentally, right?
Almost. Well, we've been wanting to talk about table etiquette in general, and then we were like, "Oh man, horror games, horrors of gaming, it all kind of works together."
Makes sense. Look at that box. That's scary as hell.
Scary as hell. So we played 2 games this week. We played Lucidity and Donnor Dinner Party.
Donnor Dinner Party.
Great games. Let's start with Lucidity, and we'll wrap it up with Donnor Dinner Party. Oh man, do I have things to say about this game. So Lucidity, 6-sided nightmares. The goal of this game is to escape your dream, right? Basically, you're having like a nightmare.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're having like a nightmare. You get all these different dreams, and the goal is to get out. I'm trying to look for the cool cards. The artwork is so fancy.
The artwork is beautiful.
And it comes with 80 dice. Oh, I could do my ASMR.
There we go.
It comes with 80 dice. It is literally like a dice game.
Yeah, the dice are called dreams, and that's kind of how it works. One of the interesting things I do like about it is that, like, you don't automatically lose kind of when you lose. You become a nightmare, and you kind of ultimately become the villain, which is cool.
Right.
You still have a way to win. There's
lots of different ways to play. So basically, every player goes by themselves, and they have a turn. I think this is even a game you can play by yourself.
Yeah, there's a solo option.
There's a solo option.
It's complex enough to play by yourself.
Yeah, it's complex enough. That's a good way to put it. It's complex enough that you can play by yourself. And your goal is to get through these dreams. All the different dice do different things, and the goal is to gain 15 power to wake yourself up. You can get taken over by a nightmare if you roll enough of the same color dice, and then you become one of them. I remembered to call them nightmares.
We were calling them demons the entire time we were playing.
I do remember that, yeah.
And they all are just like types of dreams that you have. So there's temptation nightmares, primeval fear, imprisonment, depths. So it's supposed to like feed into your generic fears when you dream. And I think there's another one that I missed because envy.
They also have like really kind of 2 separate types of artwork that are part of the same cards.
Yes.
So it's family friendly.
Yeah, the PG
so
version.
the adult one has like multiple types of artwork, and then they have a family friendly one where it's super cute. So like if you were playing with your kids, they're not nearly as scared because some of the artwork is. Sarah had to play with these.
Sarah did
She
have to
did.
play with those.
We
I
gave
also
these
had
to-
to play with those.
We gave these to Sarah and Mitch. So let's talk about this game a little bit. Do we want to start with the rating and then we'll go into why?
Sure. We could do it that way.
You know, this game was a Kickstarter game, I believe.
I believe we said
Yes,
it was.
it
yeah.
was.
Which is like awesome. I love that. I love, playing Kickstarter games. I think it's so cool. I think it's like a great success story.
Absolutely.
Which is why, I hate to say it, but the nightmare was figuring out how to play this game.
Yes. I think for me, I would give it somewhere between like a 5.5. It is replayable. It's not that you couldn't. We played it like 5 times.
Yeah.
But we played it 5 times because we kept playing it wrong. Because
I'm about to say, because the statement that we kept saying at the end of every game was,
oh,
now we know how to play it,
it.
so let's play it the real way.
Almost, yeah.
That
Every
happened every
single
time.
time we figured out something else we had to do.
Yeah.
It probably had something to do with like half the directions being on the inside of the box.
The
Which we
directions,
didn't
strange.
see until...
Yeah.
directions were also poorly written. Like, it used a lot of in-game lingo.
That was
Yeah.
a lot of the issue that we had, which had we had read that inside of the box frequently asked question thing, we would have figured it out easier because they used the lingo like dreams. And we were like, well, what is a dream? Is it just this section of the board? Is it anything you roll? Is it...
Yeah.
We had to watch a YouTube video, which we usually do anyway. We usually
Yeah.
just watch YouTube videos to help us. But we had to watch a YouTube video because we just did not get it.
Yeah, like we set up to play and then ended up reading the directions and going to watch the
Yeah.
YouTube video.
It took us a good, I would say, 45 minutes to get into just trying to play.
Yeah.
So that was hard. I think the artwork is super cool. I like the versatility of the family-friendly version and the adult version.
Mm-hmm.
I like that it can be one player. We are talking about doing solo games soon and testing out some of those.
Yeah, because I personally have never.
Yeah, and I
played it.
never have
Yeah.
either. And I found some cool ones, so we're talking about doing that soon. So maybe one of us will play Lucidity solo and see how that goes. You're right. It sucks because it is a Kickstarter, and I want to love
You
it.
just want to say good things about it because of that.
And you can see that the love that went into it.
Absolutely,
it's
100%.
It's a unique system too. I'll give it that.
It's
I mean,
fun.
the
It's
dice
a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard though. I won't. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. It's just hard to get into when you don't know how to play. And there was a lot of rules that were hard to find. Oh, if I have too many of this thing, what do I do? Now, granted, when we were cleaning up the game, we found that all of those FAQs were on the inside of the box. But I think that almost pissed off some of us more.
It did, because my thing is also if you have all these questions for the FAQ, why didn't you just address it in the rule book instead of putting it on the inside of a box in the
it
FAQ?
is in the rule book, but it's not in a place where it would naturally make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not naturally put that oh, you roll these dice. So why wouldn't in bold be hey, if you roll too many of this dice, put it back? You know what I'm saying? It's not intuitive.
I don't have time for rule books.
Screw the rules, I have money.
Screw the rules, I have money.
It's not intuitive is the word.
Even
I
the
would say.
the turn order we got caught up with, and that completely affected who was gonna win the game.
Yeah.
Where it's something all right, well, does the nightmare interrupt the dream, or is it
dreamer, does
which
the
goes
dreamer-
first? We had to look for that information, which was.
And then I remember reading something 3 times because I just could not figure out. Because I remember I was there's no way that. Because there was one point where I had quote unquote won 3 times over. I was there's no way that this isn't the end of the game. There's no way that this is just gonna keep happening because we're running out of dice. Sarah's a nightmare. She's just gonna keep taking my dice. So this is only gonna end with her winning. You know what I mean? And it took us a little bit to find those rules. I really think the downfall is the ease of understanding.
Now, it's the ease of understanding because the fact that there are so many mechanics to the game is almost it's really cool because
It's
there's so many
cool
different ways
because-
you can win the game.
Yes, that's what I like about it.
It's just not. It almost feels like it's our fault for not being able to pick it up fast enough.
It's almost like I felt
but-
defeated playing it because I just didn't know what I was doing 90% of the time.
Yeah.
And I'm super competitive, so that pissed me off.
Yeah.
But see, we also play a lot of games, so if we're not picking it up,
Yeah,
if you were just not really a gamer and you just wanted to get into it and you picked this game up, it might turn you off to, oh, this is way too complex. Let me go back and play Monopoly or something like that.
Right. I was thinking that too, is that and there's also not a lot of room to manipulate rules. Like in Monopoly, if you don't know a rule, you could just be like, oh, that's fine, just do that. Like this doesn't have that. It's just you had to find the answer.
Yeah, because if you didn't, then you ended up running out of dice and you literally couldn't continue to play the game at that point.
Right. So I think that it is a passion project. I think it's super cool if you like games with lots of rules. It is definitely not for new gamers.
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do I ever want to play this game again? With you guys? Yes.
I would never teach someone how to play it.
I would never want to play with somebody who hasn't played it before.
I would never want to teach someone how to play this game. It's too much. I do want to try it again now that we've read the rules on the inside and we have those answers. Maybe it'll make it run a little bit smoother, but I think the art is awesome. I'm glad that they got what they wanted. They kickstarted it and now it's a Barnes & Noble exclusive, which I think is really cool.
Yes. Definitely a success there.
Yeah, definitely a success. The artwork is phenomenal. You can't get over the thematically, it's awesome. And we had some creepy music playing in the background.
Yeah, we did.
when we were playing, which was fun. But overall, it's
out of 10.
Yeah.
Out of 10.
Right. Let me put it this way in BDE terms. I'm not saying it's bad. And I'm not saying I wouldn't do it again, but it's not my booty call. You know what I'm saying?
There we go.
Not going to be the first one I call when I need some D.
Yep. But if you're drunk enough,
you know what?
3 a.m., maybe.
Right. But if no one else picked up the phone,
give old Lucidity a call.
No, a game that I would have on speed dial.
Howdy, neighbor.
This game was so much fun.
This game is ridiculous. Donner Dinner Party. Oh my god, what do you even say about it?
It's just so much fun.
Why don't you describe the game, Scala?
It's very similar to kind of
Mafia?
Like Mafia.
Mafia, yeah.
Salem,
It's
something like that.
The better liar you are, the better you're gonna do at this game.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much
So you're pretty much gonna lose to Allie.
Yeah, pretty much. So one person is the cannibal. Everybody else playing. Well, not one person. Depends on how many people.
If you play with four players, and then it goes up incrementally up to 10 players. Yeah.
So you're either a cannibal or a pioneer. If you're a cannibal, the idea is obviously to eat other people, and you do that through these cards like poison, stuff like that. And then if you're a pioneer, it's to survive. You go around this board, which each spot is a week. The problem is if you don't have enough food, so everybody contributes a card. So let's say there's 4 of us playing and we only get 3 squirrels. Somebody can't eat. So you have to decide who is least valuable to the group.
You mean 3 fish, Scala?
3 fish or 2
we can
squirrels.
Eat with the squirrels. That feeds 2 people.
You're right.
Yep, only 3 fish this week. Guess we got to eat somebody.
Yep, which is ultimately what happened to me. First game, week 1.
Why are you so upset?
It was week 1.
We needed somebody to film.
We needed someone to eat.
You
were a bad leader.
I was a bad leader. Well, we also didn't understand the game right
wrong.
away.
Yes, we played wrong. But after a round, we figured it out.
And then you have the camp leader who kind of leads. So the only person who doesn't get to choose their card is the camp leader, and that rotates throughout the weeks.
And it's to add some diversity to the game. So they could put a poison in and not know.
Exactly.
And then it kills people, and then you don't know who the cannibal is.
The idea is to sabotage, if you're the cannibal, to sabotage that week's food without
and then
anybody
not get voted
realizing you're the one who sabotaged.
Exactly.
Yeah, the idea is to sabotage and not get voted off.
Because then you get to convince everybody else, hey, why don't we just eat some people? Gosh darn, I would hate that.
Yeah, we have no choice now. There's not enough food.
Got no choice now, kids.
Gotta eat some people.
Gotta eat some people.
We were talking with those accents the entire time we were playing.
We was having some.
Yes, it is on our Instagram. You can see it.
Western pioneer accents the whole night.
Yes.
It was a lot of fun. And this is definitely a game that alcohol would make.
Drinking
It's a
game.
drink. Yeah.
Next time we play this, we're going to get more people. We are going to get super plastered.
I didn't mention that. You could play with up to 10 people, which is huge.
It's awesome. We're so excited to play this again. It was one of those things that it's hard to keep replaying when you have a small group because really only one of us is going to be the candidate.
Yeah.
It's a 1 in 4 chance, and then you learn how people start to lie and not that it's not replayable, but after we played Lucidity for like 3 hours and we played this for like another hour or two, I can't wait to play it again though. Oh my God.
Me
It was
too.
so fun.
Me too. It was a lot
I
of
had
fun.
the ultimate deception. I'm still very proud of it.
She decepted one of us.
It's
Wasn't
called
me.
Deceived.
I was so torn
We are deceptive.
in that last game.
I told you, man. I told you she was lying.
Mitch was like, I know she's lying. I was like, how? How do you know?
That
Please
was the
tell me."
best.
I
He
feel
goes,
like that
"No,
we
you
were speaking
like,
in accents was killing me because, like,
Yeah.
You were like, do you want to know how I know she's lying?
I was like, how? Please tell me.
I just dead ass stared at both of them.
you was a liar.
But yeah, definitely.
Scala, would I lie to you?
Yes. The answer is yes.
See, you dropped the accent first. That's why he believed you. He went serious mode.
No,
first.
you know what it was? It's because she went in. Yeah, she dropped the accent and she was kind of like, I always want to play the villain. I haven't gotten to play the villain yet. And I was like, she does always want, and that's what got me.
Yeah, because I didn't even get to play the Nightmare
And then she
first on
kind of,
Lucidity.
she was like, Mitch, I'm done with you. And Mitch kept explaining it, and I was like, oh, is he overcompensating? I just couldn't tell.
And at the end of the day,
Oh man, she was the cannibal.
She always wins. She always wins.
that's not true. I don't always win. I just always win at arguing.
That's true.
Yep. Yeah, and part of my ignorance, I had no idea this was based on an actual thing.
Oh, we told you that
What?
yesterday.
Yeah, I just found out
Wait,
yesterday.
what? Wait,
I
wait.
didn't
Wait,
know.
you don't know that the Donner Party's a real thing?
No.
Okay.
All right, it
so
wasn't just me.
History
Okay.
lesson. Scala goes, oh, that's based on a book. And we were like, no, it's based on history. So, Oregon Trail times, they were
Like the late 90s.
not the game.
Oh.
Oh my God.
There were an actual group of people, the Donner Party, who were traveling, and people, it was during winter and it was like super harsh, blah, 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 blah. I don't really know all the details, so let's not pretend I'm a historian here. And people had to eat other people to survive. Now, granted, historically speaking, they were eating people who were already like dead. They weren't like killing
Yeah.
people.
That's just what they told
But there's
everybody.
conspiracy theories that they were killing off people so they could eat them.
Mm-hmm.
So were they cannibals? Whatever.
They ran
It's
out of
kinda where,
squirrels
like-
and fish, I guess.
It's kind of where all those stories come from, right? Like even like the Roanoke stories where it's like, oh, all these people
Yeah.
disappeared. Are they cannibals? It's all that realm of history.
Mm-hmm,
So it's based in reality. So the fact that we're making light out of history, I don't know about that, but yeah, so it's based on something real. It's not like some weirdo was just like, oh, cannibalism. Yeah.
I don't know which is weirder though. The fact that it was.
That's, yeah.
But I'm still gonna play it. I'm just gonna say that now. I'm still gonna play it. It was
Oh my God.
extremely
It
fun.
is so fun. And it is like impressively fun. Like I did not think it was going to be as funny as it was.
Yeah, it was.
And-
Definitely the accents helped. I believe.
Absolutely. I'm not like the go check out our social media guy, but like go check out our Instagram where we posted all the videos of us playing. We were just like,
It was
We had
hilarious.
we
so
were
much
having
fun.
so much fun.
Yeah.
Also, this should be noted is whatever material they made all their stuff out of
Oh,
is
yeah.
like the nicest like vinyl material in the
It
world.
looks like a mouse pad.
It's not like a it's like
a.
I don't know. I think vinyl is the word
Mm-hmm,
for it, but it's like it's super textured. All the cards are like this. The book is like this. The map comes with a little frying pan.
Always appreciate good gaming materials like that.
Yeah, like
Yep.
good gaming materials make life.
Yeah, I agree.
The only thing I would say about it is I wish there was just more options as far as the supplies and hunting
Yes.
cards go, because there's really just fish, squirrels,
Fish,
empty
squirrels,
hands, poison,
Poison and
Medicine.
medicine.
and medicine. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. The game is not made to be complex. So if you're looking
Yeah.
for a game that's like requiring you to do a lot of thinking, this is like if you guys have ever played Mafia just like in your house where you like, write down who's the Mafia and who's the whatever. This is like that with some material. So
Yeah.
it's nothing like it's nothing like over the top.
With the mechanic of the getting the hunting cards and trying to
Yeah.
find enough food
And
for
like
the week.
everybody gets a card that's like a card that they can play to help themselves. So like one card lets you not get voted for a week, one card lets you do some extra hunting, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, the versatility could be a little bit more, but it's by no means like
Necessary. Yeah.
But it's
it
got
is
its
just
formula
a
down.
oh
and
my
it is
God, it's just a
simple and
fun, simple, hilarious game.
social game. There's a lot of
Social.
role playing going on too,
yeah, we must have been laughing like 75% of the time.
Oh my God. It was so
Great
good.
game. Great game.
Yep.
It was so funny. Sarah's a
else?
shitty liar.
She
And
gave up just because.
She was the cannibal one of the times that we
I
played.
think she was the cannibal twice in a row, and we got her.
She
I
was.
think.
Well, we got her the second time, but the first time she was the cannibal, she was so dead set on not getting caught as the cannibal that she forgot about winning.
So we just made
we
it to the end of
played
the
a
week.
whole game where like we voted you off. You off. That's when you died.
Yeah.
We voted you off
Right,
the first
yep.
week because you were just like we were like, oh, Scala, you're a shitty leader. We had no way to know who was the cannibal at that point.
Yeah.
So we voted you off, and then the whole game we had food the entire game. We didn't have to take any other votes.
Yeah.
Because Sarah was dead set on not getting caught.
Yep. Oh, so I don't think we explained how you win. So if you're a cannibal, you have to, what is it, by the
There
end
has
of
to
the
be
week?
equal amount of cannibals to
Cannibals.
players.
Yeah.
Or more.
Or more cannibals to players. Well, yeah, in a 4-person game, it has to be equal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're the pioneers, if you make it to the end of if it's either 6 or 7 weeks, depending on how many people.
depending on how many people.
Yeah. If you make it to the 6 or 7 week mark without getting eaten, you win. It's like a super easy, like,
Yep.
you either eat people or you win.
And I believe there's like a time limit in which you have to make your argument, which we may not have been playing with right. I'm not.
I mean, we didn't use a time limit, but it was fun.
It was just fun. But I imagine if we play with more people, we'll have to figure that out and kind of use the time
We
limit.
replaced that rule with you have to speak with an accent.
Yeah, we
pretty much,
really
yeah.
did.
Yeah, so if you're in Jersey and you wanna give it a try,
Yeah, anyone in Jersey.
I want to get as many people as
Oh my
possible just
gosh.
to
This
see
would
how
be
it plays
fun
out.
with 10 people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to play some Donnor Dinner Party with us?
I ain't no
Yep.
damn cannibal.
Really? Because you jumped to cannibalism real quick there.
That first week, I was hungry.
So, ratings. Donnor Dinner Party.
I'm gonna give it an 8. An 8. It's my
Go.
kind of game.
Give it the top 10.
I'm going to give it a 9. I think it is so fun.
I had 2 hours of pure fun playing that game.
Yeah.
It is just, and that's what games are supposed to be, right? Like, just fun. Like, it is just,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if it was like we were also on like a heightened state because Lucidity is really dark and we were like really focused and
Yeah.
really
And it
like
was in comparison to Lucidity, it wasn't as complicated.
the
Yeah.
complete opposite. So,
But it's also like, kind of fits that horror theme. I mean, you're like eating.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
that's like the great part of it is that it is
Right.
a horror game, but like it was also fun and entertaining. So it was really nice to have two sides of the spectrum. We had something really dark that was like really, as a board game can go, was scary. Like I think I told you guys I had like a nightmare the night that I was like stuck. I was playing Lucidity, but I was like
Yeah.
stuck in the dream and I couldn't get out. So like it is scary as far as board games go, and this is like horror in the literal sense of like
Yeah, the history of it is scary enough. They didn't have to
the history is scary. I think that overall, I do think I would still recommend Lucidity. I just would not recommend it to new gamers.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would go out of my way. If you have it and you know someone who has it or plays it or you could borrow it, I definitely think it's worth playing. I think the concept is super cool.
Do we know the prices?
Yeah, so Donnor Dinner Party is this is $30
All right.
At
It's
Barnes
pricing.
and Noble. You can only get this at Barnes and Noble. It's an exclusive. And Donnor Dinner Party is I want to say 20.
That's not bad.
that is really good. $20 for that.
Yeah, especially if you get 10 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a game you could replay over and over again.
Yeah.
Remember, support your local stores. But like I said, including Barnes and Noble. This is a Barnes and Noble game.
Yep.
Let me look up Donnor Dinner Party if you can get it for like what price you can get that
$30 is a good price too, just for the option of solo
Oh,
play.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, $30 is pretty much always what I'm willing to pay for a game.
Mhm.
So yeah, Amazon is pricing this at $15. Usually Barnes and Noble is like a little bit more expensive than that.
$15.
So that's where I got both of these because I was going to buy Lucidity specifically, and then we saw that, and I was like, I'll just pick it up.
You know who likes Lucidity?
Who?
Paulie.
Well, I bought this for my brother for Christmas, and he
Oh, did
lost
you?
it. So
Wow.
right, rude. So that's how I found out about Lucidity. Was I saw it every single time I go to Barnes and Noble. I was like, man, I want to play this. I called him that night, and he's like, I don't know where it is, and so I bought it.
Wow.
Rude.
Future podcast guest, I'm sure. Paulie.
Yeah. Hopefully soon you guys will meet my brother, and then we can all tell him he's rude.
Yep.
Rude.
Rude. So overall, Donnor Dinner Party, Lucidity. I think we averaged around a 5-ish here, 5-ish, 6-ish,
5-ish, 9-ish,
and 9-ish here because
Yeah.
I was kind of right in the middle of both of them. So,
Pick them up.
pick them up, try them out. Let us know what you guys think about them. Or, Instagram Live your Donnor Dinner Parties.
Oh, it's fun.
Yeah,
It is just.
it's a lot of fun.
You get
It's
put
definitely
on
a lot
the
of fun.
spot in that game too. You gotta
Yep.
defend yourself.
It is a good time. So let's jump into our next little shout out thing, section, segment, whatever you want to call it today. So we plan on making this a regular thing, which we talked about. So first, just like last week, we have an Etsy shop and a podcast. We'll start with the Etsy shop. Scala, you want to talk about the Etsy shop a little bit? It's the bottom one.
All right. It is called, was that Saffron Stitch?
Yeah.
Right? All right. So saffronstitch.etsy.com. SAFFRONSTIT Stitch. Yeah.
.com.
So what do they have there? They have D&D face masks. I mean, with the
Pandaroni.
the Pandaroni out there, you got to stay safe. You got to keep your mask on, and what better way to do it than with a D&D mask?
I ordered one.
It's not just masks either. They have things
No,
like
they have a
pot
whole
holders.
Etsy.
Yeah,
And it's not
a lot
just
of-
D&D. It's just like
yeah, they have like
fandom culture.
yeah, like fantasy stuff, like galaxy,
Yeah.
like space kind of stuff. I saw too.
Did you order me one?
No. I've been looking for this print everywhere. So it's funny when they messaged us because I've been looking for this specific print that they had on their shop where it's like it's right on their Instagram. It's like a blue one with like dice and all this kind of stuff on it. And I have looked at their shop before, believe it or not, and they didn't have it when I wanted to order it a few weeks ago. And then I saw it again today and I was like, oh, I ordered it. So hopefully it'll be here
There we
soon.
go. So check it out.
Why are you looking at me like that?
I'm gonna go order one for myself now.
Good. Do it.
I'm gonna order 2.
Okay. Are you going to give one to Scala?
Sure. You'll get one, Scala.
Yes.
I just love the new mask marketplace. There's you can get a mask for anything.
You
now.
really can. How do you not have a Master Chief mask?
Well, we're gonna go order one right now. I hope.
Okay.
We're gonna
Etsy
get him
shop, Master Chief.
We're gonna get him a Reddit correspondent mask, just the Reddit logo. in
Mr.
the
I'm just getting
Stop.
Mr. Reddit
Never
on it.
say those words, please.
Why do you not like that?
Reddit correspondent.
We're
Oh
getting
my
Mr.
God.
Reddit on it, like Mr. Wonderful. Mr. Reddit. All right. Hi, Princess. So, the podcast that I found, they just randomly started following me on Twitter, like my actual Twitter, and I was just like, oh, I wonder what this is.
What is that Twitter? Just so our viewers know.
A Gaming Girl Says. I made it when I started like all of this gaming stuff because I wanted it separate from my life, and now it's the only Twitter that I
Wait,
use.
that's why that Twitter handle wasn't available for me?
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, so that's me. And this podcast started following me, and I wasn't like promoting anything. Like I wasn't like looking for podcasts or anything. It was just a random follow. I think I might have like retweeted one of our things. And man, is it the coolest thing ever. So it is called Workout Adventure Podcast. Their Twitter is Workout ADVENTU 1. So it's not adventure, it's just Adventu. Adventu 1. They're on Apple and Google Podcasts. So Workout Adventure Podcast. If you look them up, they have 2 episodes out right now. And what it is they basically tell like a 30-minute story, and you are the D&D character, but it's a workout. So like the one I listened to is you're a monk and you're like running, and you gotta they have different types of workouts, and they said that they're gonna do 10 episodes in this season. So the monk one is like, and it's cool, there's like theme music, and the guy who speaks for it, his voice is awesome. I love his voice. He basically tells a story like a DM, but in between it tells you to like do workouts. It's like, okay, you can see I don't remember what it was, whatever, Citadel down there. Okay, you have to run for it. And then you just keep running until you quote unquote reach it.
That's
in the
super
podcast.
interesting, yeah.
And then you bring a dice with you. And he was like, you either can stop and roll it, or you can just like put your finger on the dice and then figure it out. And then that'll tell you like what you have to do. So they'll be like, oh, do like you'll stop here and you'll do push-ups and you'll do 20 push-ups if you roll 20, stuff like that.
Great way to get us nerds
What
in shape.
idea.
What an idea.
Yeah, right? Shout out for innovation.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Unique.
So they have a monk and oh my God, what is the other one? I don't remember. I wrote it down. The monk was the one that I listened to. Whoa. Lost
you there for a sec.
You lost me. Monk and barbarian CrossFit.
That makes sense. Barbarian
that's gonna
CrossFit.
be a workout.
Yep.
Yeah, barbarian CrossFit. So I didn't listen to barbarian CrossFit yet. I listened to monk running is like what it was called. So man, is it awesome though. And like I said, I think there's something to be said about someone who has like a nice voice and he had a good voice for it. I tried messaging him before the show, or I assume, I don't know who's working on it. I tried messaging them before the show. I haven't heard from them, but hopefully they watch this and they hear it. They only have like 100 followers on Twitter, so 100% go follow them. It is so worth it. I followed them on Apple Music. It's super entertaining because in New Jersey, things still aren't open here. So now we can do that on our hikes.
Oh.
We can pretend that
Bring the GoPro, we'll film it.
We'll pretend that we're like monks and stuff.
We're gonna LARP hike.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
LARP hiking, everybody.
We have to commit now. We have to
we
do
go
it.
to
We
that
said it on the
castle.
pod. We have to do it.
We said do it for the pod.
Do it for the pod.
So go check out that Etsy shop and that podcast. If you have podcasts and Etsy shops and Kickstarters and things that you want us to look at, please let us know. This was me saying comment down below, but this will come to SoundCloud and all that first. So,
Yeah.
Let us know. Join our Discord. It is a good place. We're always active on our social media, so we're always looking for people to talk to. Shout out to our Discord that's finally like starting to get people.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling.
Yeah.
Conversations.
And let me do this real quick. Sorry, my Discord is like 500 pages long. Oh. Shout out.
Brag right there.
Huh? Shut up. Shout out to Ghost Unit 25. I couldn't remember the number at the end of it because you have been such a great supporter of ours just since we've been doing all of this. And we can't wait for you to start your Kickstarter so we can support you the same way you've supported us. So.
Absolutely.
100%.
And of course, as always, shout out to Casey.
Shout out to beautiful Casey. If you guys have not seen the Vox Machina drop that they did today on, what is it, the 26th, 27th, the 26th. They did a drop today of preview of their
It was called the
making
Legends
of-
of the
The
Legends of
yeah, the
Vox
legend-
The making of the legend of the legend of the making of the legend of Vox Machina
Yeah.
or something like that.
our best friend Casey is she's working on the show. She is in the video 7 minutes and 45 seconds in. You will see her drawing Trinket. So if you are a fan of Trinket, you see her drawing him
And go check out the back of Casey's head.
also it's just becoming a thing that we just shout her out on this podcast. And
She's imaginary. She's not real.
one day she'll be here when she comes back from California. She is real. She's on the screen.
Prove it.
I guess no one would know that that's Casey. We could just be like, that random person drawing Trinket's our friend.
Spot the Casey. New game.
Spot the Casey. So shout out to Casey. We are wishing you all the best luck in California and stay safe out there. I know there's like a lot of stuff going on out there. So wrapping up now that we've talked about Casey, because we always talk about Casey at the end.
Now we're clear to wrap up.
Yeah, now we always talk about Casey at the end of our podcast. Horror episode.
So, I think to sum it up, just don't be a dick, have good table etiquette. And it's, take the new people under your wing if you're a veteran player and kind of, show them the ropes and let them know it's okay to role play or it's okay to not know everything and stuff like that.
100%. Do you want to know the worst game I was ever in?
Yes.
Okay. This is a real quick VAS
Do
story.
I know this one? Oh, no,
Everyone,
this is some VAS. Okay.
Everyone knows this story. I've been in a lot of bad situations, but the worst situation I was ever in was I was in a Vampire the Masquerade
Oh, no.
Mm.
I know this.
server And it was like a bloodline server, and man, the people running it were wild. Like wild. And when I tell you we talk about trigger warnings, it had everything from like being I'm trying to avoid using certain words. Being taken advantage of to changing your physical makeup of your body forcefully.
Was this the FP game?
Yes.
Okay.
What is FP?
Try not to use certain words, so I figured.
I don't know. Yeah. There are some words that I cannot say on this because even like on, like I mean, I want to say them, but I'm not going to say them. You check out our Discord and I will post screenshots because I was that asshole that took screenshots of it. But yeah, that was the worst game I was ever in. And I just realized I can't see 90% of the words. So I guess the rest of the story is irrelevant now.
Whoever guesses what FP is the Discord user of the week.
There we go.
Discord user of the week. It's still going to be Ghost Unit 25. Still my Discord user of the week. So yeah, all that to say is don't be a dick. Don't talk over people. Don't be the main character syndrome person that we all love.
Oh, God.
It's the worst. It's literally the worst.
Right. Mitch, any thoughts you want to add? You weren't here for that part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people get their, flow their creative juices in playing D&D. You know what I mean? Like, but gotta remember, you're there to have fun. Not everybody's at the table to practice their dramatic writing or whatever, their role play, their acting, their accents. Some people are just there to just laugh.
Get away from the real world for a little bit.
Yeah.
That's the point of it.
Yeah. Well, I think with all of that, that concludes our horror episode of BDE.